Cox. I am the first negative constructive speech. I'm responding to the main claim that the United States should reform the federal income tax to be a flat tax of 17% to benefit both the working American and the economy. As you remember, his three main claims, or his three secondary claims, were that first, a flat tax system is more simple than the current tax, that two, imposing a flat tax will be more fair, and that three, the simple flat tax of 17% will stimulate and boost economic performance. I have a couple of issues just with the argument in general. We're not given as the audience, we're not given the reason why we should change from the current tax to the flat tax. I don't believe that we're given substantial proof in the previous argument, so therefore there's no basis for the argument. The opponent offers a proposition that the flat tax is beneficial. From the secondary claims, we are to understand that his actual position is that the current progressive tax should be replaced with the flat tax because he believes the flat tax is more beneficial. However, in order to convince us that the flat tax is more beneficial, he must first prove significance. He must prove that there is an unresolved problem that is the consequence of the way things are now. In his speech, he does not explicitly state the disparity that currently exists and the harm it faces. Therefore, I argue that the opponent has not provided the proof required for us to believe that there is a reason to accept his proposal. Secondly, the data that's used talks about the average American, which we would assume means the mean. When you're taking all the numbers and combining them, you're looking at the average. But his proposition is actually about the working American and the economy. So there's a disparity between those numbers that can describe outliers and the people that we're talking about as the working American, and we don't have a definition. Okay, so another reason to dismiss his first claim, a flat tax is simpler than the current tax, is because the majority of people already use quick and effective simple forms. According to Scott Cronk of Entrepreneur.com, approximately 70% of people use short forms such as 1048 or 1040EZ, which are relatively simple and quick to fill out. In fact, several e-file companies report that people using online tax software are able to complete it in less than an hour. Scott Slemrod, in his book Taxing Ourselves, takes this claim one step further and states that the 1040EZ is so simple that it could be placed on the postcard that's about the size it is, because it just involves writing your wage, income, exemption, standard deduction, and then you look up the number in the back of the booklet you receive. And in fact, the IRS can do your calculations for you if you choose to. And Cronk has stated that e-filing can be found to be 99% accurate. He further states that the complexity in the tax code directly affects only a minority of taxpayers with itemized deductions or significant capital or business income, i.e. rich people. It doesn't affect people like you and me, college students that don't have assets and businesses. It affects people that have significant assets. Also, this form of tax preparation, the e-filing, is inexpensive, and people like us normally can get it for free. Also, it's popular. My opponent asserts the flat tax system is simpler. However, the previous pieces of evidence show that, in fact, a majority of people use the e-filing method, which has been shown to be inexpensive and quick. I'm going to argue against his second point, that imposing a flat tax will be fair. I assert that there are two weaknesses to this claim, because he doesn't define the term of fair, and then also because, in fact, his tax really is a progressive tax. It's not a flat tax. One way to define fairness could be the ability to pay principal. According to Slemrod, the ability to pay principal is a family's ability to bear the tax burden, to tolerate a sacrifice. The idea being that paying $1 is lesser sacrifice for a well-to-do family than for a poor family. An equal sacrifice requires higher tax payments from the well-to-do family. So if we defined fairness as being the ability to pay tax, and the current system is fair because of the graduated income levels and their required percentages, because the higher income has more ability to pay, and in order for them to sacrifice as much as the poor family, they have to pay a higher income. He also states that the fair tax is in a sense progressive. With this concession, I believe that the argument is meaningless, because We're not talking about where there's an advocate who's having a burden of proof for us to change to an entirely new system. It's essentially, if you look at the framework, it's a similar system. Instead of 5 tax brackets, there's 2, because you get the standardized deduction. If you make less than $12,000 a year, you don't get taxed at all on the flat tax. And then there's the other tax bracket, which is everybody else. So I'm proposing that this is actually just a modification of our current tax system, but there hasn't been proof as to why we should change the current tax system and why this 2 bracket and then 0 or 17%, why that's better than the current one. Okay, and lastly, I would like to challenge his third claim that imposing a flat tax will stimulate the economy. He provides data that the flat tax would increase growth. However, he fails to acknowledge the portions of the economy that would be hurt badly from getting rid of deductions. And he fails to acknowledge there will be an increase in the disparity of wealth. With a flat tax system, the number of donations will decrease. Flat tax would reduce individual charities' gifts by 10 to 20%. And that's because when you take the flat tax, you remove social policy from tax. The deductions is to try to get people to do what we believe as a society is important, like home ownership and health insurance. That's why there's tax deductions for businesses that want to provide health insurance. So there's lots of societal benefits that come from the deductions that are purposely put there so that people will do things that we deem good. And then also there's an increase in the disparity of wealth in the sense that with a flat tax, investment income is not taxed. And so what that means is if you were a rich person that had assets and you were living off of the income from your assets, then you could be living and paying no tax at all. And then someone else, for example, a cab driver or someone working at a factory could be paying 17% of their tax bill. If you're not making a lot of money, 17% is a lot of money. So it's for this reason that I assert the flat tax would depress portions of the economy in a few certain important areas and would create greater inequality of wealth. In conclusion, I would like to pose the question, what is the real reason conservatives propose the flat tax? Later, my partner will provide some possible motives for the flat tax that have not been brought out in the open. I provided evidence showing that the flat tax is actually a poorly designed progressive tax, parading as being more fair, and that poorer families will be forced to sacrifice more than well-to-do families. And the flat tax would take away incentives to donate to charities, decrease home ownership, and the rate of those with health insurance. In addition, there would be a huge undertaking to re-educate the public about this new tax system. With the evidence I've proposed, it's clear to see that there's no substantial reason that's been provided for the American people to change the current tax system, and even if we chose to do so for unstated reasons, the flat tax would not be the appropriate direction.